The stars were burning. Princess Kira stood at the window of the royal transport ship and watched another Volani cruiser explode in the distance. The blue flames spread silently in the vacuum of space. And then there was nothing. 2,000 soldiers. Gone in a moment. Her people were dying, and she could do nothing. The Volani Empire had ruled their corner of the galaxy for 10,000 years. They were scholars, artists, and diplomats. Their cities floated among the clouds. Their music could make other species weep with beauty. They solved problems with words, not weapons. But the Dreth Collective did not care about words. The Dreth were conquerors. They were massive creatures covered in dark armor that grew from their own bodies. They lived for battle. They ate the flesh of their enemies. In 3 months they had destroyed 12 Volani fleets and taken 3 star systems. Kira's father, Emperor Torvan, had tried everything. He offered peace. He offered tribute. He offered territory. The Dreth response was always the same. They sent back the heads of his diplomats. Now, the Emperor had made a different choice. A desperate choice. He was sending his only daughter to a human. Kira did not understand why. Humans were a young species. They had only discovered space travel 400 years ago. They had no psychic abilities. They lived short lives. They were physically weak compared to most species. The galaxy considered them primitive and unimportant. But her father had insisted. There is a man, Emperor Torvan had told her. He saved my life once, long ago, during a diplomatic incident on a neutral station. He was different. The things he did, the way he thought, I have never forgotten. He may be the only one who can help you become what our people need. And what is that, father? Kira had asked. The old emperor had looked at her with sad eyes. A survivor. The transport ship landed on Ashara, a border world that belonged to no empire. It was a harsh planet of red stone and cold winds, nothing like the floating gardens of home. Kira stepped off the ship and immediately felt the gravity pulling at her bones. Ashara was heavy. Everything here was heavy. A woman waited for her at the landing pad. She was human, with dark hair and practical clothes. Her name was Yuna. You are the princess? Yuna asked. There was no bow, no ceremony. I am Crown Princess Kira Vel of the Volani Empire, first daughter of the— Follow me, Yuna interrupted. He is waiting. Kira felt anger rise in her chest. She was royalty. She had been treated with respect since the day she was born. But she swallowed her pride and followed the human woman through the dusty streets. The compound was at the edge of a canyon. It was made of simple stone buildings surrounded by rough terrain. There were no gardens, no art, no beauty. Just function. And there was the man. He stood in the center of a training yard, watching her approach. He was not tall. He was not impressive. He looked tired, with gray in his short hair and old scars on his arms. He wore simple clothes and held a cup of something hot. His name was Do-hun Park. You are the human my father spoke of? Kira asked. Yes. You do not look like a warrior. Good. She waited for him to say more. He did not. He simply watched her with calm eyes. She tried to read his mind, to sense his emotions. Her psychic abilities had always been strong. She could read almost anyone. But Do-hyun was a wall. There was nothing. Just silence. How do you block me? She demanded. I don't block you, he said. There is just nothing in my head that you would understand. Kira did not like this man. She did not like this place. She did not understand why her father had sent her here. I'm told you will train me, she said. What will you teach me? Tactics? Weapons? Strategy? Do-hyun took a sip from his cup. First, I will teach you to suffer. Excuse me? Your people are dying because they do not know how to suffer. They break too easily. You break too easily. I will fix that. Kira felt her face grow hot with shame and anger. You insult me. You insult my entire species. Perhaps this was a mistake. Perhaps I should return home and— And what? Do-hun interrupted. His voice was still calm. Go home and die? Your fleets are destroyed. Your armies are scattered. The Dreth will reach your homeworld in 30 cycles. When they arrive, they will kill everyone you have ever loved. They will burn your floating cities. They will eat your children. Kira could not speak. The words hit her like physical blows. You can go home and die beautifully. Do-hyun continued. Your people are good at that. You can write poetry about the end. You can compose songs of sorrow. And then you will be gone. And no one will remember you existed. He stepped closer. His eyes were cold and hard. Or you can stay here. You can let me teach you how ugly survival really is. You can learn to fight like a human. And maybe, just maybe, you can save your people. Kira's hands were shaking. She wanted to hit him. She wanted to run away. She wanted to cry. But she thought of her father. She thought of her people. She thought of those 2,000 soldiers burning in the silence of space. What do I have to do? She asked. Do-hyun nodded. It was not approval. It was simply acknowledgement. Tomorrow, you wake at dawn. You will run until you fall. You will train until you cannot move. You will learn until your mind breaks, and then you will do it again, and again, and again, for 100 days. And after 100 days, Do-hyun turned and walked away. After 100 days, you will not be the same person. The princess will be dead. Something else will take her place. Something your enemies will learn to fear. Kira stood alone in the training yard. The wind was cold. The sky was dark. She was far from home, surrounded by strangers, on a planet that felt like a prison. But she did not leave. She stayed. The sun was not yet up when Do-hyun banged on her door. Run, he said. That was all. Kira had barely slept. The bed was hard. The room was cold. She was still wearing her silk robes from the journey. She stumbled outside into the dark morning, and Do-hyun was already moving. He ran toward the canyon. She followed. At first, it was not difficult. Kira was young and healthy. She had danced at royal ceremonies for hours. She thought she understood physical effort. She was wrong. Do-hyun did not stop. The path went up, then down, then up again. The red stone was sharp under her thin shoes. Her lungs began to burn. Her legs began to shake. Still, he did not stop. After 1 hour, she fell. Do-hyun stood over her. Get up. I cannot, she gasped. I need rest. The Dreth will not let you rest. Get up. She got up. She ran. She fell again. She got up again. This pattern continued until the sun was high in the sky and she could not feel her legs anymore. When they finally stopped, Kira vomited on the red stones. Her beautiful silk robes were ruined with sweat and dirt. Her silver hair was tangled and wild. She looked nothing like a princess. Do-hyun handed her water. Tomorrow we go farther, he said. This was the first day. The days that followed were worse. Do-hyun made her lift heavy stones and carry them up hills. He made her climb cliffs with her bare hands. He made her fight with wooden sticks until her arms were covered in bruises. He made her swim in cold rivers until her body went numb. Kira had trained before. All Vellani nobles received combat education. But Vellani training was different. It was slow. It was graceful. Warriors spent decades perfecting single movements. They meditated for hours to attune their psychic senses. Combat was an art form. Do-hyun's training was not art. It was violence. You move too slow, he would say, striking her with his stick. Your enemies will not wait for you to find your balance. You think too much, he would say, knocking her to the ground. Thought is the enemy of action. When the time comes, your body must move without your mind. Kira hated every moment. She hated the pain. She hated the dirt. She hated the ugly efficiency of human combat. Where was the beauty? Where was the honor? There is no honor in death, Do-hyun told her when she asked. There is only death. Honor is what survivors tell themselves to feel better. One night, after a particularly brutal training session, Kira sat with Yuna and asked about humans. She wanted to understand these strange, primitive creatures. Yuna smiled. It was a sad smile. We are not primitive, Yuna said. We are just different. Our planet was harsh. We were not the strongest animals. We were not the fastest. We had no claws, no armor, no venom. But we survived. How? We did not stop. Other animals would chase prey until they got tired, then give up. Humans would chase prey for days. We would walk after them, never stopping, until they collapsed from exhaustion. We were not designed to win. We were designed to outlast. Kira thought about this. It explained much about Do-hyun. He never seemed to tire. He never seemed to quit. He simply continued, like a force of nature. "Your history," Kira said. "I have read some of it. You fought so many wars against each other. You almost destroyed yourselves many times." "Yes," Yuna agreed. "We are very good at killing. We are also very good at surviving our own stupidity. Perhaps one leads to the other." By the 25th day, Kira was a different person physically. Her soft skin was now rough and tanned. Her elegant hands were covered in calluses. Muscles had appeared on her slender frame that no Vellani should possess. Do-hyun gave her new clothes. Simple pants, a rough shirt, practical boots. He took away her ceremonial blade and gave her a weighted training stick. Then he looked at her long silver hair, the mark of Vellani royalty. "It will get in your way," he said. "It will give enemies something to grab." Kira understood what he wanted. She took the knife he offered and cut her own hair. The silver strands fell to the ground like fallen leaves. When she was done, her hair was short and practical. She looked at her reflection in a piece of polished metal. She did not recognize herself. "Good," Do-hyun said. "The princess is starting to die. Soon, something better will take her place." That night, Kira dreamed of home. She dreamed of floating gardens and gentle music. She dreamed of her father's warm smile and her mother's soft voice. She dreamed of everything she had lost. When she woke, her pillow was wet with tears. But she got up before dawn. She ran before Do-hyun told her to. She trained until her body screamed. She was starting to understand something. The Vellani way was beautiful. The Vellani way was elegant. But the Vellani way was dying. If her people were to survive, they needed something new. They needed something ugly. They needed something human. On day 26, Do-hyun introduced something new. He called it the Void. It was a small room with no windows, no light, no sound, nothing but darkness and silence. The walls were lined with material that blocked all psychic energy. For a Vellani, it was the most terrifying place imaginable. "You will go inside," Do-hyun said. "You will stay until I open the door." Kira looked at the room. Her heart was beating fast. Vellani were connected to each other through psychic bonds. They could feel the presence of other minds like warmth from a fire. Being cut off from that connection was worse than physical pain. "Why?" she asked. "Because the Dreth know your weakness. When they capture Vellani prisoners, they put them in isolation. Your people break within hours. They tell everything. They beg for death. If you are ever captured, you must survive the void." Kira stepped into the room. The door closed behind her. At first, it was not so bad. She sat in the darkness and tried to meditate. She had spent many hours in meditation before. Silence did not frighten her. But this was different. There was no warmth of other minds. No distant sense of connection to the universe. There was only nothing. Empty, cold, nothing. She reached out with her psychic senses and found only walls. She was alone. Truly, completely alone. After 1 hour, she began to feel afraid. After 2 hours, she began to talk to herself. After 3 hours, she began to scream. She pounded on the door. She begged to be released. She offered anything, everything, just to feel another presence nearby. Her mind was creating monsters in the darkness. Memories became nightmares. Thoughts became enemies. After 4 hours, Do-hyun opened the door. Kira fell out of the room, crying and shaking. She grabbed his arm like a child holding onto a parent. She did not care about dignity. She did not care about pride. She just needed to know she was not alone. Do-hyun looked down at her without emotion. "Tomorrow you go again," he said. She did. She lasted 4 hours again. Then she broke again. The pattern repeated for days. 4 hours, break. 4 hours, break. She could not push past it. One night, she decided she had enough. She found the communication equipment in Yuna's workshop. She would call her father. She would beg him to bring her home. This training was madness. It was torture. It was destroying her. But the equipment did not work. "I disabled external communications," Do-hyun said from behind her. Kira turned, anger burning in her chest. "You cannot do this. I am a princess. I am here by choice. I can leave whenever I want. No, you cannot. This is imprisonment. Yes. Kira felt rage like she had never felt before. She attacked him with her fists, with her feet, with every fighting technique she had learned. Do-hyun blocked everything easily. He did not fight back. He simply waited until she exhausted herself and collapsed on the ground. "Are you finished?" he asked. "I hate you," she whispered. "Good, hate keeps you alive. Now let me tell you a story." He sat down across from her. "When I was young, I was captured by enemies. They put me in a room like the void. No light, no sound, no contact with other humans. They kept me there for 43 days. Kira stared at him. 43 days. She could not survive 4 hours. "How?" she asked. "I learned to exist in my own mind. I built worlds inside my head. I talked to people who were not there. I created entire lives that existed only in my imagination. The void was not empty. I filled it with everything I had ever experienced, everything I had ever dreamed." He looked at her with those cold, steady eyes. "You are afraid of the void because you think you need others to exist. You think your identity comes from your connection to other minds. But that is a lie. You are complete on your own. You just do not know it yet." Kira refused to train for 3 days. She stayed in her room, meditating, reaching out for any psychic connection. She found nothing. The compound was surrounded by dampening fields. She was as alone here as she was in the void room. On the 4th day, she returned to training. Not because she believed she could succeed, but because she had nothing else. This time, in the void, she did not fight the emptiness. She accepted it. She stopped reaching for others and started reaching inside herself. She remembered her mother's songs. She remembered her father's stories. She remembered every book she had read, every sunset she had watched, every moment of beauty she had experienced. The void was not empty. She filled it with herself. After 9 hours, Do-hyun opened the door. Kira walked out calmly. Her eyes were red from crying, but she was not broken. She was tired, but she was whole. Do-hyun nodded. "You found the first truth," he said. "You do not fight because you will win. You fight because stopping is not an option. The void cannot break you if you refuse to let it." Kira looked back at the dark room. She was still afraid of it. But fear was not the same as defeat. "Again?" she asked. Do-hyun almost smiled. "Again." Something changed after the void. Kira stopped counting days. She stopped wondering when the training would end. She stopped thinking about home. There was only now. There was only the next task, the next lesson, the next challenge. She woke before dawn without being told. She trained without being ordered. She pushed herself harder than Do-hyun pushed her. One morning, Do-hyun found her already running the canyon path when he came to wake her. "You are learning," he said when she returned. "I am surviving," she replied. Same thing. Now, the training changed. Physical conditioning continued. But Do-hyun began teaching her something new. Tactics. Strategy. The art of war as humans understood it. It was nothing like what she had learned before. Vellani military doctrine was built on honor and tradition. Battles were formal affairs with rules and ceremonies. Fleets faced each other in open space. Commanders announced their intentions before attacking. There was beauty in Vellani war, even when it was terrible. Human doctrine was different. "Never fight fair," Do-hyun told her. "If the fight is fair, you have already made a mistake." He taught her about ambush tactics. Attack when the enemy is sleeping. Attack when they are eating. Attack when they think they are safe. Never give warning. Never show mercy. Strike hard. Strike fast. Disappear before they can respond. He taught her about supply lines. Armies need food. Armies need fuel. Armies need ammunition. Destroy the supplies. And the army dies without you firing a single shot. He taught her about fear. War is not just physical. War is mental. Make the enemy afraid to sleep. Make them afraid to eat. Make them jump at shadows. A frightened enemy makes mistakes. Mistakes kill. Your people fight for honor, Do-hyun said. The Dreth fight to win. You need to fight to make them regret ever starting the war. He showed her human history. Kira was amazed and horrified at the same time. She learned about small groups of fighters who defeated massive empires by refusing to face them directly. They hid in mountains and forests. They attacked at night. They disappeared like ghosts. Eventually, the empires gave up and went home. She learned about defenders who were outnumbered 10 to 1 but held their positions through pure stubbornness. They lost eventually, but they cost the enemy so much that the victory meant nothing. She learned about generals who won impossible battles through tricks and deception. They made enemies think they were weak when they were strong. They made enemies think they were here when they were there. They turned the enemy's strength into weakness. Humans do not see war as a contest, Kira realized one day. You see it as a problem to be solved. Yes, Do-hyun agreed. Honor is a luxury for those who can afford it. When survival is at stake, we do whatever works. Yuna gave her books to read. Human philosophy, human poetry, human thoughts about life and death and meaning. One passage stayed with Kira more than any other. It was an old human saying, fall 7 times, stand up 8. She meditated on this. Vellani philosophy taught acceptance. When fate was against you, you accepted it with grace. You died beautifully. You did not struggle against the inevitable. Human philosophy taught defiance. Fate was not real. Destiny was not fixed. If you fell, you got up. If you got up, you could still win. The only true defeat was giving up. Kira began to understand something important. Humans were not successful despite their short lives and physical weakness. They were successful because of it. When every moment mattered, you did not waste time on acceptance. You fought. Always. Forever. Until the very end. Do-hyun presented her with strategic scenarios. Enemy fleets approaching a planet. Defending an outpost with limited resources. Escaping capture behind enemy lines. At first, Kira gave Vellani answers. Honorable last stands. Formal surrenders. Dignified retreats. Do-hyun rejected all of them. You are still thinking like a princess, he said. Think like a survivor. So she tried again. She looked for weaknesses. She considered deception. She thought about what would hurt the enemy most, not what would look most honorable. If enemy fleets approach my planet, she said slowly, I would not meet them in open space. I would hide my ships in asteroid fields. I would lay traps. I would let them think they have won, then attack their landing forces when they are vulnerable. I would make them pay for every step in blood. Do-hyun nodded. Better, what else? I would evacuate civilians secretly. I would poison water supplies before the enemy could use them. I would collapse infrastructure. Every city would be a trap. Every building would be a danger. And if they finally took the planet, I would keep fighting. Resistance, sabotage, assassination. They would never have a single day of peace. Do-hyun smiled. It was the first time she had ever seen him smile. Now you are thinking like a human. That night, Kira looked at the stars from the compound yard. Somewhere out there, her people were fighting and dying. They were losing because they fought with honor against enemies who had none. But she would change that. She would bring the human way to her people. The ugly way. The effective way. The way of survival. She would teach the galaxy to fear the Vellani. Her body had transformed in ways that should have been impossible for a Vellani. Her arms had lean muscle. Her legs were powerful. Her core was strong. She had always been slender and elegant, like all her people. Now she was slender and dangerous. But the physical changes were not the most important ones. Her mind had changed. The way she saw the world had changed. She did not look at problems the same way anymore. She did not look at enemies the same way. She did not even look at herself the same way. Day 70 arrived, and Do-hyun announced a test. 6 combat drones, he said, armed with shock weapons. They will try to disable you. You will try to survive. Just survive, Kira asked. Survive and win. The drones were released in the training yard. They were fast. They were smart. They worked together like a pack of hunters. Kira had seen Vellani warriors face similar tests. Most lasted a few minutes before being overwhelmed. Kira lasted 4 minutes. But she did not just survive. She won. She moved like water, flowing between attacks instead of blocking them. When she struck like iron. targeting the weak points Do-hyun had taught her to find. She used the terrain, climbing walls and using obstacles as shields. She turned the drones against each other, making them collide in their eagerness to catch her. When the last drone fell, Kira was breathing hard but standing. She had several bruises, but nothing serious. Yuna watched from the side, her mouth open in surprise. She started. That was acceptable, Do-hyun said, but his eyes showed something like pride. The days that followed pushed Kira even harder. Do-hyun introduced more complex scenarios. Multiple enemies, limited weapons, darkness, confined spaces. Every situation was designed to be unfair. Every challenge seemed impossible. Kira stopped caring about fairness. She stopped caring about possible. She just found ways to win. One evening, Do-hyun asked her a question. If the Dreth invaded your homeworld tomorrow, what would you do? The old Kira would have answered immediately. She would have talked about rallying the fleets. She would have described a glorious final battle. She would have spoken of honor and sacrifice. The new Kira thought for a long time before answering. I would not fight them directly, she said. Our fleets cannot match theirs. A direct battle would be suicide. So you would surrender? No. I would evacuate everyone I could save. I would move them to hidden locations. Then I would make the invasion as painful as possible. She stood and began to pace, thinking out loud. I would poison the water supplies before we left. Not enough to be obvious, but enough to make their soldiers sick over time. I would collapse bridges and tunnels. I would hide explosives in buildings. Every city they took would cost them. Do-hyun listened in silence. I would train resistance fighters. Small groups. Hit-and-run tactics. They would attack supply lines. They would assassinate officers. They would disappear before the Dreth could respond. Every night, Dreth soldiers would be afraid to sleep. And if they captured civilians, use them as hostages? Kira paused. This was the hard part. The part that the old Kira could never have accepted. Then I would have to accept that some would die. But fewer would die fighting than would die surrendering. The Dreth do not take prisoners for long. They would kill the hostages eventually anyway. At least this way we would hurt them. At least this way we would have a chance. Do-hyun stood and walked to her. You understand something now that most beings never learn. Survival is not about winning every battle. It is about being willing to lose battles, to sacrifice, to suffer, in order to win the war. Your people are afraid of ugly choices. You are not afraid anymore. Kira felt the truth of his words. She had changed. The princess who arrived on this planet would have been horrified by the person she had become. That princess believed in honor and beauty and noble sacrifice. This Kira believed in survival. There is one more lesson, Do-hyun said. The most important one. What is it? You must learn to inspire others. One warrior can change a battle, but one leader can change a war. You need to make your people believe in the ugly way. You need to make them willing to do what must be done. He handed her a wooden training sword. Teach me, he said. Kira stared at him. What? Teach me what you have learned. If you cannot explain it, you do not truly understand it. If you cannot make me believe, you will never make your people believe. So, Kira taught. She explained the tactics. She demonstrated the techniques. She described the philosophy. And as she spoke, she realized that Do-hyun was right. Teaching made her understanding deeper. Putting ideas into words made them real. By the end of the session, Yuna had joined them to listen. Both humans watched Kira with something like respect. You are ready for the final test, Do-hyun said. What is the final test? Real combat. Real enemies. Real death. Kira felt fear rise in her chest. She had trained against drones and simulations. She had never killed a living being. She had never faced true danger, but she did not back away. When do we start? She asked. Do-hyun smiled that rare smile again. Tomorrow. The moon was cold and gray, with no atmosphere and no life. It belonged to no empire, but the Dreth had built an outpost there anyway, a communications relay that helped coordinate their invasion fleets. Kira looked at it through the viewport of their small transport ship. Somewhere down there, Dreth warriors were going about their duties. They had no idea what was coming. "This is not a simulation," she said quietly. "No." Do-hyun agreed. He was checking his weapons beside her. "If you fail, you die. If you are captured, you will wish you had died. Are you afraid?" "Yes." "Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Only fools feel no fear." The plan was simple. Kira would infiltrate the outpost alone. She would sabotage the communications array. She would escape. Do-hyun would wait with the ship, ready to extract her. "Why alone?" she had asked when he explained the mission. "Because someday, you will face challenges alone. You need to know you can survive without me, without anyone. This is your graduation." The ship landed in a crater 2 kilometers from the outpost. Kira checked her equipment one final time. A small blade. A compact energy pistol. Explosives for the communications array. A dark suit that would help her blend with the shadows. She stepped out of the ship and began to move. The lunar surface was silent and eerie. Her boots made no sound in the vacuum. She stayed low, using rocks and craters for cover. In the distance, the outpost lights glowed like tiny stars. She reached the perimeter in 30 minutes. 2 Dreth guards stood at the entrance, massive and terrifying in their natural armor. Each one was twice her size. Their clawed hands could tear through metal. The old Kira would have looked for another way in. The old Kira would have tried to avoid them entirely. The new Kira waited until one guard turned away, then moved. She crossed the distance in seconds, silent as a shadow. Her blade found the gap in the first guard's armor, the soft place beneath the jaw. He fell without a sound. The second guard turned at the movement, but he was too slow. Kira was already inside his reach, her blade finding another weak point. 2 kills. Her first kills. She felt nothing. No, that was not true. She felt something. A cold focus. A clarity she had never experienced before. There was no room for guilt or doubt or fear. There was only the mission. She entered the outpost through a maintenance hatch. Inside, the corridors were dark and industrial. Dreth did not care about beauty or comfort. Their architecture was purely functional. Kira moved through the shadows, avoiding patrols. She counted 15 Dreth in total. Too many to fight directly. She would need to be invisible. She found the communications array in the center of the outpost. It was a large room filled with equipment, guarded by 3 Dreth technicians. She studied the room through a vent, planning her approach. There was no clean solution. She would have to fight. Kira dropped from the vent onto the first technician. Her blade opened his throat before he could scream. The second technician reached for a weapon, but Kira was faster. Her pistol fired twice. The third tried to run. She caught him at the door. Alarms began to sound. Kira worked quickly, placing explosives on the key components. Her hands were steady. Her mind was calm. The sound of running feet echoed through the corridors. They were coming. She armed the explosives with a 30-second delay and ran. The corridors were no longer empty. Dreth warriors appeared around every corner, weapons raised. Kira did not try to fight them all. She used speed and surprise, ducking through maintenance passages, climbing through ventilation shafts, always moving. A claw caught her shoulder, tearing through her suit and into flesh. She spun and fired, killing the attacker, then kept moving. Blood floated behind her in the low gravity. The explosion shook the entire outpost. The communications array was destroyed. Mission complete. Now she just had to survive. The main entrance was blocked. Dreth warriors were everywhere, organized and hunting. Kira changed direction, heading for the waste processing section. Every facility had weak points. Every structure had exits the builders forgot about. She found a disposal hatch that led outside. It was small and filthy, but she squeezed through. More claws caught her leg as she escaped, leaving deep gouges. She fired blindly behind her and pulled herself free. The lunar surface stretched before her. The ship was 2 kilometers away. She began to run. Her shoulder was bleeding badly. Her leg was damaged. Every step sent pain through her body. But she did not stop. She could not stop. Stopping meant death. Behind her, Dreth warriors emerged from the outpost. They were faster than her on the open ground. They were gaining. Kira pushed harder. Her lungs burned. Her vision blurred. She thought about the void training. She thought about all those hours of running until she fell. She had trained for this. She had suffered for this. She would not fail now. The ship appeared over a crater rim. Do-hyun was at the ramp, weapons ready. He fired over her head, and she heard Dreth bodies falling behind her. She reached the ship and collapsed inside. The ramp closed. The engines roared. They lifted off as energy weapons scorched the ground where they had been. Kira lay on the floor, bleeding and gasping. Every part of her body hurt. But she was alive. The mission was complete. Do-hyun looked down at her. "How do you feel?" he asked. Kira thought about the question. She had killed beings tonight. She had been wounded, hunted, nearly captured. She had faced death and walked away. "I feel ready," she said. Day 100 arrived. Kira stood in the training yard one final time. Her wounds had been treated, but they would leave scars. She did not mind. Scars were proof of survival. A ship descended from the sky. Her father's ship. It was time to go home. Do-hyun stood with her as the ship landed. "You are not the same person who arrived here," he said. "No, I am not. The princess is dead." "Yes." "What has taken her place?" Kira looked at him. This man had broken her and rebuilt her. He had shown her the ugly truth of survival. He had made her something new. "Something the Dreth will learn to fear," she said. She bowed to him. Not the elaborate ceremonial bow of Vellani royalty, but a simple human gesture of respect. One warrior to another. "Will I see you again?" she asked. Do-hyun handed her a small knife. Plain. Simple. Deadly. "If you survive what is coming," he said, "I will find you." Kira took the knife and walked to her father's ship. She did not look back. Looking back was for those who regretted. She had no regrets. She had work to do. The Dreth Armada entered Vellani space on a cold morning 6 months later. 40 warships. 300,000 warriors. The largest invasion force the Dreth had ever assembled. They expected to conquer the Vellani homeworld in days. They expected the elegant, fragile Vellani to surrender or die beautifully, as they always had. They did not expect what happened next. Princess Kira had spent 6 months preparing. She had reorganized the Vellani military from the ground up. She had dismissed the old generals who believed in honor and tradition. She had promoted young officers who were willing to learn new ways. She had trained elite strike teams in human combat tactics. She had built hidden bases throughout the empire. She had prepared evacuation routes for civilians. She had placed explosives in every city, ready to deny the enemy anything useful. When the Dreth fleet arrived, they found no glorious defense force waiting for them. They found no formal challenge, no declaration of honorable combat. They found silence. The Dreth landed their troops in the capital city. It was empty. The beautiful floating towers stood abandoned. The gardens were still. The music halls were quiet. The Dreth commander smiled. The cowardly Vellani had fled. Victory would be easy. Then the explosions began. Buildings collapsed on Dreth soldiers. Hidden bombs destroyed landing craft. Supply ships in orbit were attacked by small, fast vessels that appeared from nowhere and vanished just as quickly. Within hours, the Dreth had lost 5,000 warriors without ever seeing their enemy. Kira broadcast a message across all frequencies. It reached every Dreth ship. It reached every corner of the galaxy. "You came for an easy conquest," she said. Her voice was calm and cold. "You found a war. Every soldier you lose, we will replace with 10. Every world you take, we will poison. Every night, your soldiers will fear the shadows. This is not surrender. This is the beginning." The Dreth commanders did not believe her. They had conquered many worlds. They knew how wars were won. They ordered a full assault. For 3 years, they regretted that decision. Kira waged a war unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. She never met the Dreth in open battle. Instead, she bled them slowly, constantly, mercilessly. Strike teams attacked supply lines. Dreth soldiers went hungry while their commanders waited for food that never arrived. Resistance fighters sabotaged equipment. Weapons failed at critical moments. Ships crashed for mysterious reasons. Assassins targeted Dreth officers. Generals died in their sleep. Commanders were poisoned at their meals. Eventually, no Dreth wanted to be promoted. Leadership meant death. The Volani civilians who had been evacuated became a weapon as well. They spread throughout the galaxy, telling stories of Dreth atrocities. Other species began to question whether the Dreth were as powerful as they seemed. Some began to offer secret support to the Volani resistance. Kira herself led the most dangerous missions. She had become a legend. Some said she could not be killed. Some said she was not truly Volani anymore, that she had become something else, something human. The Dreth called her the Ghost Queen. Their soldiers whispered that she could walk through walls, that she could appear anywhere, that death followed in her footsteps. They were not entirely wrong. After 3 years, the Dreth Collective made a calculation. They had conquered the Volani homeworld, but they could not hold it. Every day cost them soldiers, resources, and reputation. Other species were starting to see weakness. Rebellions were growing in their other territories. They retreated. The galaxy watched in shock. The Dreth had never retreated. They were conquerors, unstoppable and inevitable. But they had been stopped. They had been defeated. By the Volani. By a princess who had trained under a human for 100 days. Whispers spread across 1,000 worlds. Ambassadors and merchants and travelers carried the story. The elegant Volani, dismissed for centuries as scholars and artists, had broken the Dreth Collective. How? What had happened to them? The answer was always the same. Their princess had learned the human way. Emperor Torvan did not live to see the final victory. He passed peacefully in the second year of the war, knowing that his people would survive. Kira became empress. She stood on the balcony of the rebuilt palace, looking at the floating gardens her people had worked so hard to restore. She wore practical clothes beneath her ceremonial robes. The simple knife from Do-Hyun hung at her belt, as it always did. General Morath, who had once opposed human influence in the Empire, approached her with humility. Empress, delegations from 15 species have requested audiences. They want to send their own people to learn from us. They want to understand the human way. Kira smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who had seen too much and learned too well. Tell them the first lesson is free, she said. You do not fight because you will win. You fight because stopping is not an option. Morath bowed and left to deliver the message. Kira looked at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Dreth were licking their wounds. Somewhere out there, other empires were looking at the Volani with new eyes. And somewhere out there, on a quiet border world, a human was living his quiet life. She wondered if he knew. She wondered if he was proud. That night, on Ashara, Do-Hyun sat in his compound and listened to the galactic news. The Volani victory. The Dreth retreat. The rise of Empress Kira. The Ghost Queen. Yuna brought him a drink and sat beside him. She did it, Yuna said. She actually did it. Do-Hyun poured 2 glasses. One for himself. One for an absent student who had become something remarkable. She was always going to, he said. She just needed to learn how. He raised his glass toward the stars. Not bad, he said quietly. Not bad at all. Somewhere in the galaxy, a new era was beginning. An era where the elegant and the brutal could exist together. An era where survival and beauty were not opposites. An era born from 100 days of pain, suffering, and transformation. The galaxy would never be the same. And it all started because a desperate emperor asked a tired human to teach his daughter how to survive.